Panchatantra, a very familiar name, and for many of you, possibly this could be one of your childhood favorites. Many of us know the stories in Panchatantra, but very few of us know the story of Panchatantra. This is our very small attempt to bring forward this gem of fictional stories filled with morals, ethics, and values, and most importantly, practical wisdom that originated in ancient India. First things first, let's understand the word Panchatantra. It's two words, Pancha, which means five, and Tantra can be loosely translated as tactics. So Panchatantra is a set of 5 tactics that teach practical wisdom to fare through different phases of life. And in this short video, let us understand a bit about Panchatantra. In the next couple of minutes, let us understand the history of Panchatantra, where it originated, how it got propagated across the world. The second is the content of Panchatantra, what is actually written in Panchatantra. And the third, and most importantly, how is Panchatantra relevant for our day-to-day lives today? Starting with the first, the history of Panchatantra. Like most of ancient Indian scriptures, which cannot be conclusively dated to a specific period in past because of its great antiquity, Panchatantra is also not specifically datable to which year it belongs to. However, in many Indian temples that are constructed 1500 to 2000 years ago, even today we can see the Panchatantra stories carved on the walls of these temples. So that explains how old Panchatantra is. It's somewhere around 2000 to 2500 years old. The originals of Panchatantra manuscripts are now lost, and only the manuscripts which were written in past 3 to 500 years, bits and pieces are surviving today. Here is one such ancient parchment preserved in the Philadelphia Museum of Art. For those who have read Panchatantra, if you remember, this is the story of the talkative tortoise and the 2 cranes. And on the right, it is a carving on the wall of a temple in Nalanda, which was constructed 1600 years ago, depicting the same story from Panchatantra. Panchatantra is one of the widely translated literary works of India into many other languages, and we'll see that in a bit. But here, as you see, the manuscripts of Panchatantra, which is written in Arabic and Latin, which are written approximately 1100 to 1300 years ago, these manuscripts, they do exist today, still. If you look back into the history of last 1500 to 2000 years, Panchatantra was very valued by people from West Asia and Europe for its incredibly subtle and simple yet very deep way of teaching practical wisdom through short stories, where every story has a moral at the end of it which helps us to deal with the different situations in life. If we turn the pages of history back 1500 to 2000 years, how Panchatantra traveled across the world, this is how it looks like. Written first in Sanskritam in India back in 500 BC, like I said again, this is a conservative date, not a concrete one. First, it was translated into Pahlavi, a Persian language, in 500 CE, and then into Arabic in Saudi Arabia in 750 CE, and then into Ancient Greek of Greece in approximately 1080 CE, and then to Old Spanish in Spain in 1250 CE, and then to Old English in UK in 1570 CE, and into Latin in 1580 CE, French 1720, German 1870, like this the list goes on. Besides the title Panchatantra, it is very popularly known in West Asia as Kalila va Dimna and in Europe as the Fables of Bidpai. Bidpai is actually the name of Vidyapati, which got distorted as Bidpai, and we'll see what it is. But these are the 2 names with which it is very popular in West Asia and Europe respectively. It is translated into approximately 50 languages across the world, 50 languages, 200 versions of Panchatantra exist that got translated from one country to another. But why? What is the reason for such propagation of a literary work? There must be some deep value in it, otherwise people will not translate into these many languages, right? Let's see what it is. Let us try to briefly understand the content of Panchatantra, what is written in it, and why is it so popular. Once upon a time in ancient India, there lived a king with the name Sudarshana, and he has 3 sons. Unfortunately, these 3 sons are not so very intelligent, in fact dull-headed. So in order to teach them the necessary knowledge in a way they understand, King Sudarshana requests a guru in his kingdom with the name Vishnu Sharma. Vishnu Sharma agrees to teach these 3 princes the knowledge that is rightly needed to fare through their lives. both as individuals and also as the future rulers of the country. Vishnu Sharma incorporates a very interesting way of teaching these three dull-headed princes. He teaches the wisdom through multiple stories, wherein the characters of the story are surrealistic, like animals, birds, fish, different living things talking to each other, and how they interacted in different phases of their lives, and eventually deriving a moral out of the stories that happened between various animals. These fictional stories are filled with a message at the end of every story, which is the knowledge that Vishnu Sharma intends to impart into his three students. In the teachings of Vishnu Sharma, the stories that he narrated to these three princes is nothing but the book that we are talking about, Panchatantra. So Panchatantra is 5 chapters. The first one is Mitra Bheda, second one is Mitra Labha, third one Labdha Pranasham, fourth one Kakaulikiyum, and the fifth one is Aparikshita Karakam. Let's briefly see what these 5 contain. The first chapter, Mitra Bheda, talks about how friendships can put you in troubles and make your life difficult. So basically how you should choose your friends, a very important thing, because friends can either make or break our life. So starting with a story of a lion and 2 jackals, what you're seeing on right, a Latin manuscript of Mitra Bheda of Panchatantra, approximately 1100 years ago. Panchatantra as a whole consists of approximately 85 stories, of which 34 are from this first chapter. A lot of stories in this chapter explain about different animals, how their friendships put them in troubles, and how one should take sensible calls with respect to whom we are choosing to be our friends. The second chapter is Mitra Labha. This chapter talks about how friendships can pull you out of troubles and make your life easy. This chapter broadly covers stories where a weaker animal makes friendship with a stronger animal, and how the stronger animal helps the weaker animal to get out of trouble. Again, the manuscript that you're seeing on the right is a copy of Mitra Labha stories, starting with the elephant and the rabbit. This manuscript is again a couple of centuries old. So this chapter contains approximately 10 stories that guide you how you should choose your friends. Now both Mitra Labha and Mitra Bheda put together gives us a perfect guidance about how we should choose our friendships and how we should not choose our friendships. And in simple words, how is it relevant for the princes? This is nothing but diplomacy. It's the diplomacy that Vishnu Sharma is trying to teach his 3 dull-headed students, how they need to take calls as kings of the country in near future. And the third chapter is Kakaulikiyum, and this chapter talks about how to control your wits during war and peace times, and how to defend your place and position both as a king and a leader. The stories of this chapter, Kakaulikiyum, are approximately 18 stories between a group of crows and owls, who kind of 2 groups of opponents, where they strategize to neutralize the strengths of their enemies, sometimes getting into direct conflict or sometimes indirectly hitting on their strengths. Again, onto your right is a page of Kakaulikiyum from a very old manuscript. Again, it's a couple of centuries old. The fourth chapter is Labdha Pranasham. This chapter talks about how to realize the true value of what you have in life. Sounds pretty simple, but really very difficult to observe in real life. It is really difficult for any person to understand the true value of what he or she possesses in life, be it the people or the things. And this chapter talks about how do we realize the true value of what we have in life, or rather what we are blessed in life with. And this is the chapter which also contains the famous story of the monkey and the crocodile. And here again is the manuscript of Labdha Pranasham, a very ancient manuscript in Persian. Fifth and the last chapter is Aparikshita Karakam. This chapter narrates different stories which has a common message about how not to make hasty decisions during unstable circumstances that would eventually push us into regret. Again, a very important guidance that would be needed for a leader of a country, which here in case are the 3 dull-headed princes. So these 5 chapters, approximately 85 stories, like I said, is a very interesting and engaging literary work. A pattern that all the stories follow is very interesting. You might have seen a Russian doll, where there will be a doll within a doll within a doll. It's nested. Same way, the stories of Panchatantra are like one story. At the end of the story, it leads to another story. The characters start narrating another story. Best example is like Inception. You have a dream within a dream. So how engaging it is. Just like that, Panchatantra stories are very engaging because you kind of tend to do a binge reading. It is so subtle, so simple, and very engaging with a deep moral associated with each story. Lastly, how Panchatantra is relevant for us today. 2,500 years old antiquity, 200 versions of Panchatantra translated into 50 languages, That itself should explain how relevant has been Panchatantra and will be forever. Take example of the talkative tortoise and the two cranes. The moral of this story is it teaches us when should we talk and when we should not talk. Sounds pretty simple but very essential skill of life. So powerful story, and that is the reason it is carved in stone since more than 1,000 years. Written in Sanskritam, translated in Arabic, Persian and many other languages. Just one story, we just tried to put together how it got translated into different languages. However, let's try to break it down into much simpler terms. If we really try to get to the bottom of a life of a student or a life of a working professional, there are two very important things that we should always be very focused about: staying relevant and staying essential. Staying relevant to the situation that we are in. In this fast changing world, be it a student or a working professional, our skills need to be upgraded very frequently to stay relevant to the situation that we are in. And second one is staying essential. Just because you have the skills doesn't necessarily mean that you are needed in that situation. There could be 10 other people, but how are you going to be essential to your learning or working environment? Having said that, this is not to breed some sort of unhealthy competition in people. In my opinion, we are no longer in the age of competition that ended almost a decade ago. This is an age of collaboration. How well can we collaborate with our colleagues, with our fellow students at work or at study to bring in something valuable which makes human lives better? That is the whole purpose of education or a profession. So that's why staying relevant and staying essential is very important in these two spaces. And for staying relevant and staying essential, learning is a process that continuously runs through our lives. Now, if we break down the learning process, this is how it goes. We have enormous amount of data, no matter whatever it is that you're trying to learn about. The data is always abundant in general. And from data, we got to make a sense out of it, and that is called as information. And from information, you have to understand what that information is. That is knowledge. And finally, the information that you turned into knowledge need to be applied in a right time and right place. And that is wisdom. Now, these are the 4 steps of learning. No matter what you're learning about, it always comes down to these 4 blocks. As part of this process, we'll be coming across different people, dealing with different circumstances, balancing out on the ethics and morals. Negotiation or diplomacy is inherently part of our day-to-day lives, and each and every one of us need a moral compass to fare through our day-to-day lives. And in this learning framework, the morals that Panchatantra so subtly delivers, be it about negotiation or diplomacy or friendship, dealing with difficult situations, how not to lose self-confidence, above all, how to just keep moving forward in life. These are the things that Panchatantra explains, and that is the reason why it has been relevant for last 2,500 years and will continue to be relevant forever. Panchatantra remains to be one of the oldest moral framework that helped people to live a better life. And Panchatantra is just another example about how the knowledge that originated in India traveled across the world and contributed to the better lives of people. And as always, thanks for watching.